Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality, the podcast where we explore unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today, we are joined by Jason Guillemette of the UAP Studies Podcast. He is out to discover the truth and find all the evidence of unidentified aerial phenomena, UFOs, aliens, whatever we can get our hands on in this crazy world. So strap in as we explore the edges of the unknown. Well, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. We have this wonderful world of ours where there are lots of things that humans have come across the ages that sort of defy our explanation. And originally we assigned the term gods or demons to those things based on the level of threat or the level of benefit that they gave to us. Lately, though, it seems like we are plagued by things that don't really fall into the realm of mythology, but rather into the realm of technology that we don't understand. And that's where we come up with this term UFOs, UAPs, non-human biologics is a new one.
I love that one.
What got you interested in the topic of studying all things alien?
You know what? In 1989, Bob Lazar came out as Dennis, this shadowy figure coming out talking about S4 and his work on crafts. And I remember my dad was really excited about that interview that day. He's like, "Oh, we got to watch it. We got to watch it." So for me being a kid, my dad's excited about it. I should be too. And as we watched the interview, before going into this, 1980s, UFOs and UAPs were always in cartoons, but nobody talked about it. Even the whole Roswell crash didn't really emerge till the 1980s again. Like, it disappeared for a long time. So the phenomenon wasn't really talked about, although it was still occurring. And what he was talking about to me made sense, even as a 9-year-old. Listening to him, and he was saying, like, this secret program, they don't want you guys to know, this is why it's in a desert. Like, to me, it was logical even at that age. So I always had an interest in it. I would watch shows with like Unsolved Mysteries, and every once in a while they had like a really good episode. And Robert has such a great voice too. When you listen to Welcome to Unsolved Mysteries, it would just creep you out with the music, right? And I loved it. So I always followed it. But then in 1994, it was late September. I later found out this just took weeks after the aerial school phenomenon in 1984 was September as well. So I had a sighting that month as well, but in northern Quebec in a town called Cadillac. Hang on 2 seconds, Joe.
Yeah.
And it's a mining town. It's a small town. It's a very small population. I later found out there's a lot of UAP activity in the area, but my brother and I are coming back home from a friend's house. It's maybe 8, 9 o'clock at night, but this time of year, it's dark, right? Like, it gets dark early. And I'm being doubled on the bike. So for anybody who grew up poor in the 80s, especially the situation of our family and being twins, we had one bike. So we made it work, right? You would sit on the handlebars and the gears would go up your butt, and just uncomfortable ride the whole way, but you may do. And so anyways, we're biking back home, and we're almost home. Like, we could see maybe 150 feet away from the house. And we're cutting across, we're getting off at one of the streets, and we're just cutting across a gravel pit near home. And all of a sudden we get hit by this intense red light out of nowhere. It came from behind us, and then all of a sudden it was on top of us. My brother stopped the bike, and then we had to stop. It was so bright that there was no way we could continue. And then when I looked down, when I was able to open my eyes, everything around us was lit. Like, all the rocks around us, like just everything was bright red, even including our bodies. And your brain fires really, really fast to try to come up with an explanation because that's what your brain does. So I thought it was a transformer on top of a telephone pole that had blown up. So if you've seen one of those blow up, man, they're bright, right? Like it's intense. So I look up, and of course, there's no telephone pole around. Like we just left the street, but directly above our heads, about 80 feet, is this cylindrical craft. We call them Tic Tacs today, but back then we called them cigar shaped, right? And the light emanated from the bottom of the craft, but there's no spotlights or anything. It just came from the craft, if that makes sense. It's hard to explain when you see something that is not human created. It's hard to explain, but that's the way it is. They came out from underneath. And it just hovered above us for a little bit. And then it just continued silently right above our head, 80 feet, just continued above a row of houses. We had a basically mobile home, a row of street where we lived. And yeah, it just went above those mobile homes. It turned and then went over the forest. And you could see all the tree branches, everything was lighting up red as it was passing. And I remember distinctively, remember this, remember this, remember this. What's really weird is that my brother and I never talked about it. We went home. I don't even remember talking to my parents about it. And I didn't start talking about it maybe till like 12 years ago. And I was mentioning it to my twin brother. Like, yeah, I had this experience. I think I was with a friend, but this happened. He goes, it was me, you idiot. I was the one driving the car. I was like, all right, that makes sense. But then I asked him, like, why didn't we ever talk about it till now? So that's a really weird aspect of the phenomenon. And the more that I've investigated it, the more this is common amongst people that have really close encounters. They just can't account, for what the event took place. And it's like a memory loss. I don't think we were taken. I don't think it was an abduction, but it was definitely weird. Like, and that light was perfectly cut. Like if you flash a flashlight on the ground, you'll get light bleed.
Right.
This didn't do that. It was like just perfectly, and it was searching the ground. These things are very much attracted to mines, minerals. People at mines see them all the time if they work at night. So it's another area of interest. And of course, if they need minerals and stuff like that for their creations or whatever the hell it is they're up to, they would look for resources that we have here, right? They wouldn't fly off and go get somewhere else. So that was very interesting. I was like, the fact that I saw that up close in that area, like it was searching the ground for something. It was so weird, but really cool experience. And that changed my life. Since that day, I've been obsessed with the phenomenon, aspects of it more so on the cattle mutilation and the abduction phenomenon. That's where I want to focus more. But I need to learn everything about it, like a general practitioner. Know everything about the subject. Educate yourself constantly educate yourself. But just focus on 2 points that you really want to focus on, and that's your contribution to ufology.
You were saying you think that it's around mines and stuff like that. Don't you think eventually they've been like, crap, we're too late now. They've already taken everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And just saying, forget it. We're going to move on because, I'm surprised they haven't gone, crap. They're taking it all. It's time for us to take over.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting is I never heard of a case where somebody sees substances going up into a craft. Usually when that happens, it's near water. Like they'll absorb water as if they're using water to use it as energy of some sort. But I've never heard of minerals being taken out, but they are interested in the mine areas. There's even a trucker that contacted me, and he works at night for these mining companies. He says, yeah, like they follow the trucks all the time. I'm like, why don't you guys talk about it? He goes, oh, we talk about it at the mine, but openly to the public, nobody would believe us. it's amazing the amount of activity and locations where these things are and how many people are aware of them. But it's still sort of taboo. Not so much anymore, but it's weird. Like, it's been going on far too long.
I wonder why they like to follow and check it out, and especially if you think they might not even need it. Like,
yeah, well, that's, if you think about it, my biggest fear is the concept of technology. And technology is great, but it requires a lot of minerals and silicon and all these sort of things to make technology work. We can't indefinitely keep mining the planet for all these resources. Eventually, even going out to space and the moon's going to be a huge industry. Whoever goes up there, colonizes, and start bringing back material from the moon owns the world. It's a game over.
So you're going to say it's a big Amazon logo.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Or Netflix, right? Just a big company that can afford it. But yeah, that's the next thing is harvesting. Our future is up there. If we can stop having wars here, our future is up there, is to get off world. I think that's a normal behavior of any sentient or intelligent civilization, is to seek more in the stars, to connect. I mean, that's been at the core of our species forever. Is that, what are we? Are we alone? We need to feel that connection. And maybe that connection is that push for us to get out there, to, become what we're supposed to become. But we got to get over this infantile mentality, these absolutes that we state, that causes us to remain where we are. That's going to kill us in the long run. And you're seeing that more in the world today than ever. And yes, it does relate to the UAP disclosure aspect. If we can't be mature adults in today's age, how do we expect, you know what I mean? Like, how do we expect to have somebody come out and say, look, we're not the only players in the game. There seems to be something above us that's a little bit more intelligent, and we got to deal with it. That's a hard pill to swallow when, we've gone so far away from science. And now it's like, I don't know if you noticed, but they'll have like an expert on a subject and then a guy that just disagrees with them. They're not equal. They don't have the same PhD. One's a lot more educated, wrote books about it. The other person's just a critic that owns a blog. And they try to make it look like it's even weight, like decide which one makes more sense. And I hate that, because at least bring somebody up to that quality or professionalism. No, don't just have a critic that disagrees with it, because I find that it's like you can't find anybody intelligent to come and argue against this guy, right? They always get a critic or a blogger that is sort of controversial, and they try to make it look like you decide which one's right. It's not the same. One's educated and has actually done field work. The other one just sits at home in his PJs and blogs about it. So that's a huge issue. And we got to deal with that in ufology. It's the nonsense that's out there, the Twitters that are more hurtful to the cause than anything. And everybody's a couch expert. Everybody has an opinion, right? Something comes out, Jacques Vallée makes a new revelation. The guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what you're calling Jacques Vallée an idiot. Where's your work, right? Show us your proof, Mr. Text warrior. Like, it's amazing. And it's so complex right now, the whole issue. Like, it's coming out, but there's no unity in this. Everybody's sort of fighting over it. And there's going to be big dollars involved soon in disclosure. Networks are going to sign exclusives with these whistleblowers. It'll be a lot harder for podcasters like us to get these people on, because they'll sign exclusives that they will only go on CNN, and they'll be well paid for it. So that's something to expect as well, that, we don't see coming, but it's going to be big business.
Well, let me ask you, so the kind of amateur or I shouldn't say amateur, I should say non-governmental UAP studies have had this kind of heart of truth and fact, just trying to find what's out there, right? It's kind of this naive search for the truth. But when I see things like the Grush hearings, and I start to see Senate hearings or House congressional hearings about UFOs, it starts to give me this kind of tingle up my spine that there's something amiss. There's something in the realm of a psyop happening. How should we approach the latest revelations coming from the Navy with the videos of the Tic Tacs and all these other UAPs that they're releasing, coupled with testimony? When we know, I forget the guy's name, we know that there have been folks in the past whose job it was to specifically feed misinformation to the public regarding UFOs.
Right. Yeah. The thing is, that's the problem that we face. I even fall for, even the other day, I'm part of a UFO group and involved some pretty big ufologists in there, including George Knapp and Ross Coulthart. And I was like, hey guys, check out this video. I was completely convinced that this thing was real, and it turned out to be fake. So I just had to say, sorry guys, I still fall for this stuff. It's okay to fall for stuff. It's okay to be fooled, but look into it. Just as, if somebody's going to put that much work in a CGI that looks so real, at least cross it off your list so you don't have to come back to it and say, does this have any validity? And some people are afraid to admit that. They just, I should just know right away. It's CGI. I have no proof to back that up, but you're stupid if you don't think it's CGI. I'm like, okay, well, that's not looking into it, is it? Like, that's just stating an opinion. So you grab all the information that's given, and the ones that make sense or seems to repeat are the ones that we need to keep at the end of the day. It's almost like, prospecting days where you would sift the sand and just the nuggets of gold would stay. That's the same thing with the news that's coming out. There's going to be some truth. There's going to be some lies. The people that have been keeping this quiet for a long time, and big business too. You think about the amount of money that they spend on keeping this a secret. It's huge. They're still in the game. They haven't gone away. They're changing their tactics because technology is advancing faster than they can keep up with. Somebody on Twitter had recently sort of asked ChatGPT to fill in the blanks of a redacted government memo about UAPs, and it did a fantastic job and pretty impressive. Like, it's like, if we could use technology now to do that, they didn't count on that. That's not something they expected, right? So faster technology is being exploited. Like, again, AI assistance, that might be huge in a breakaway for disclosure, if that makes sense. We need all the tools we can get in this case, all the eyes we can get, all the minds we can get. And it has to be a united effort globally to be able to get anywhere with this. There's not going to be one country that has the definite response to this. There's not going to be one man, because there's a lot of people out there that are messiahs of disclosure, but there's not going to be one man that's going to reveal everything to the people. That's going to be the go-to source. That's just not going to happen. It has to be a group effort. So really, in a part of ufology, that's the one thing, like, they say, be the change you want to see. And the podcast was based on that foundation, that's what I want it to be. A group of people working together towards this, not an individual host. Like, today we're going to talk about, like, I don't want it to be about me. It has to be about the guests. It has to be about what we can learn, what we can tie together. And that's what's needed today. And hope we're making that change. At least it's being reflected that way. People are commenting that in a positive way, that's at least the direction I want it to go, for sure.
So when you're running your podcast, you're having people come on and share with you their evidence and their stories. What are some common threads that you find among your guests regarding their experiences?
the scary bit, and this is the part that people aren't comfortable with, but the people in the CIA, the military, the Defense Department are experiencing this phenomenon. And I'm talking about the abduction phenomenon, the same as the general population. When we say, hey, they know about this, of course they do, because they're experiencing it themselves. We talked to Jim Semivan and John Ramirez, and there's other people. There's another lady now that's coming out as well, and she's part of the CIA, and she's been an abductee for her whole life. People are coming forward. Same with the military personnel. Like we talked to most witnesses that have come forward from the Nimitz encounters and the gimbal videos. Like we talked to almost everyone shy of Alex Dietrich and David Fravor. But besides that, every other crew member, and even recently Matthew Roberts coming forward, we've interviewed them all, and each one of them have had a massive impact on their life. And they've had this sort of paradigm shift. And they're all starting to get different abilities and capabilities they didn't have before. And that's weird because most of them, well, Kevin Day, for instance, he was the radar operator that dispatched the fighters to go and intercept these things. And he was so shaken by the experience that it was almost like post-traumatic stress. Like he was told not to talk about it. His family didn't want to talk about it. And when it came out in 2017, he started talking about it more openly. And he's still emotional today. Like you could tell there was an impact there. But he started like taking an interest in, I guess, geology, like just study of rocks and formation, like just out of nowhere, minerals. He bought a piece of land, and he felt compelled to do this. He bought a piece of land that is untouched by man, and they wanted to develop there. So he bought it, and he's preserving it. He's not allowing anybody to touch it. We even spoke with Sean Cahill, which was a sergeant at arms on the Princeton. And then he's had experience since. He's had visitations of weird entities, an abduction of sort. He actually talked about for the first time on our podcast, of all podcasts. And he just woke up on, his driveway one morning and couldn't account for where he had been after seeing a grave, of course. So even Matthew Roberts, he was on the ship, and he was the one that took in the inventory of the videos that came in from the pilots. And when I talked to him, I asked him, like, what was the obsession? And he was obsessed with it. Like, he had never seen anything like that before, never been exposed to UFOs, but he could not stop watching that video on the ship. Every coffee break, he would go to the room and watch it again, almost so to the point where people were commenting, like, Matthew, you're still watching this? Like, come on. And he was like, how are you not fascinated by this? But it drove him to an obsession. And then he woke up one night and he's getting visitations by strange entities. And I asked him, like, do you think you brought this on to yourself? But it's all related to that event. Like, these guys, it's not like they just walked away and nothing happened. There's consequences, and really big consequences to their lives. That's why people don't understand. It's not just a story. There's an effect behind these events. And when you notice that people in the Defense Department come forward and CIA agents saying, yeah, like even Jim Semivan was in full service at the CIA. He was an intel agent. And he woke up one night and there's 3 little entities in his room, and him and his wife have an experience. It's crazy to think that, because we would like to think, well, these people, they're here to protect us. And if there was really something going on, they would reveal it. That's not the case. The case is they're terrified as much as we are. I don't think they know as much as they would like to know. I think there's probably some organization, some top military branch that might know a lot more on the situation than they do. And that's the part that sucks, is that this is happening to us one way or another, but we're not getting the confirmation. It's like a Me Too movement for abductees or experiencers, but we're just not getting acknowledged. It's not even brought forward. We're just at the infancy of bringing this to the mainstream media, just saying, hey, there's stuff in the sky. That's not the big part of it. The stuff in the sky, that's nice. The technology, that's nice. But the interactions with us, the civilians, the population, that's huge. The entities are where it's at. The craft is great. If we could reverse engineer it, great. But the entities mean more in all of this than anything else. And I think that's what we got to start pushing forward. Not just UFO, UAP. That's great. We know they're here. They're active all the time. But the entities behind it, that's what we need to study and focus on the most.
You think after all this time of, all these visits, abductions over the years, don't you think that they would have all the information that they need?
Oh, yeah, by far. By far. We don't have the information we need, though.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, you think, like, their point of always abducting and studying and stuff, like, I wonder what information they're still trying to get that they don't have.
It's a social call, Kyle.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a form of dating, universal dating. It's Tinder for the universe. You know what I mean? You don't need to be a willing participant. I don't think that they're here to gain information from us. I think they already know everything about us. What they're doing, though, is modifying as we go along. We know that there's modification in the humans. When you look at every other genome of everything on the planet, the human is the only one we can't account for 2 genomes. It doesn't make sense. They don't know where it comes from. There's manipulation in the DNA because that's the only way to get it in there.
Maybe it's how they get jumped into their alien gang. They have to go abduct someone.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's a gang initiation, right? Or a school project of some sort, right?
Like cow sleeping in the...
Yeah.
All right. Go abduct somebody now.
The aspect of it, as terrifying as these abductions can be, because it is subjective to the experiencer. Some experiencers have a rather amicable, friendly interactions that is mutually agreed upon, that they're a willing participant in the abduction. Most are not, but there's a reason why they're there. And they keep conveying that to the abductee, that in some way you signed up for this. They get that message in some way, they signed up for it, or that they're part of them. Like, we are you, you are us. Like, they get these weird things. And that's fascinating, because what does that mean? Why aren't we questioning that further? If they're all repeating that, why are we not questioning that? Like, okay, well, what does that mean? Philosophy has a huge role to play in this. It's not just science. We have now our new co-host on the podcast is Dr. Michael Glosson, and he's a philosopher. And I thought, what better co-host to have than a philosopher? Because he'll ask questions that I won't even think of. And philosophy and science is needed in this subject. And there's a third thing that's needed subject. So it's philosophy, science, and then spirituality. Not religion, but spirituality. Those 3 elements have a role to play in all of this. And we need to question that. Like, how is that related? What's the power behind it? Like, we've never done a science behind it. So it's time. Like, we need to look deeper than we have ever had before, past the experiencers, past the stories, but the meaning behind it. What's the consistency in the stories? Why is certain people being taken? Why certain people being left behind? What's the game plan? And the randomness of it. Roderick Martin, our good buddy, he's trying to get the African-American population to stand up and talk about these experiences that they themselves are experiencing, but they don't talk about it because culturally you don't do that, right? Like, you just don't talk about it. There's plenty of cultures that do that. Even in my local area, we have a huge Punjabi population. They don't ever talk about it. They're experiencing it the same as we are. So it's funny. Like, once we find out the actual data from people that have not spoken up about this yet, it's going to be amazing. Like, the statistics are going to change.
So when you've got all of these folks who are telling you about their experiences, or you're collecting data about the experiences, are there things that that jump out at you as things to be skeptical of, or do you just file them under like outliers? How do you go about scrutinizing the data that you collect?
Well, that's actually a good question, because there's, I mean, everybody has their different ways. My biggest problem is always find my own biases. So if I'm biased towards a subject, or, I don't believe in the lizard people or whatever, then it's harder for me to get, more just open-mindedness about it. But I'm trying to. And that's the point, is saying, look, I need to look at all angles. It's so complex that, look, let's explore everything, because there's no definites right now. Let's not throw anything out. Let's sift through it. There's a lot of misinformation, like you guys mentioned, but there's commonalities that, or things that people say that you're like, why would they add that to the story? Like, what's the importance of that? And little details that, you're just like, whoa, that's unique. I've never heard that before. And the messages that people get, look, sometimes it's not just an abduction that you're on a table of medical procedures, but then they'll talk to you, or they'll walk you around the ship and show you the ship. Some people even get to fly them. They say that they sit down and their consciousness and the ship become one, and that's how they fly. That's crazy, but they keep mentioning that. So let's add that to the database, and these are repeatable occurrences that people are having. Same with the medical procedures. Like they're interested. They're not interested in the lungs or the cardiovascular at all, which is really interesting. They're interested in the other organs, but they're not interested with our heart or the cardiovascular system, the lungs. There's no cases of that ever being interested in it or having any experiments, but the reproductive organs, the incubation of, fetuses and stuff like that. Like, those are things we hear all the time. And it's interesting. It's like, why? Like, what's the purpose behind it?
It's starting to sound more and more like frat boys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just woke up one morning. I didn't remember the night before. Bam, I'm pregnant. Yeah. That's a good analogy. I love that. That's great.
What are the most common things that you hear from people? Like it seems like everybody says this, this, and this. What are they that you find?
After the abduction or the recall of an abduction, and it seems that sometimes it follows a family line. So if mom or dad were abductees, you're more likely to be an abductee. If they skip you, but it's more likely your kids are going to be abductees because your mom or dad was an abductee. So they follow the line. Most parents, abductees, have witnessed or subject to witnessing their kids being taken with or without them. So sometimes they're with the child, sometimes their child gets taken without them, and there's nothing you could do. It's horrible. As a parent myself, I mean, I can only imagine what that feels like to have something like that happen. It's completely out of your control. Even if you're skeptical and you're like, I don't believe in that stuff, if you give it a moment's thought and you say, if it is real and it is really happening, which this evidence seems to suggest, the implications of it are not personal. It has nothing to do with your government, has nothing to do with the military disclosing anything. Now it involves you and your kids, your family, personally. Because if they're saying, look, it could be random, anybody could be taken at any time, and there's nothing we could do about it. Nothing. And this has been going on for the duration of our species being here. Like, it's continuously monitoring us, and for whatever purpose. We're just catching on to it. That's it. It's not that they're new. It's not they just arrived. It's just now we're paying attention to it. Our technology is better. We could detect them better than ever. We have cameras everywhere. Like, dogs have cameras attached to them now. Your doorbell. We're capturing this stuff at high rates. We got whistleblowers coming out saying the government, like over 30 of them supposedly are coming forward. Tim Burchett just got his SCIF approval, so he's going to get more information on these disclosures. It's happening. Whether people are ready for it or not, it's happening. But disclosing that these entities are here and that we have some dead bodies also then validates the cattle mutilation occurrences, the abduction phenomenon occurrences, and those will all need to be addressed. And it needs to be addressed because the government hasn't talked about that yet. But if the civilians are experiencing this, that should be priority number one to protect the people of the United States, Canada, or the globe from something we don't understand. But it's never talked about because they're scared to go there because they don't have enough knowledge about it yet. And they're experiencing it themselves. It's a tough situation to be in.
It's interesting you say it's not talked about because we have had a lot of discussion about it publicly lately, probably culminating, I don't know how you feel about it, but the Mexican alien mummies.
Yeah.
So there has been a lot of discussion in it recently and a lot of public apathy towards the disclosures. And to what do you attribute the public reaction?
The public is waiting to see something. We're a species like, we need our five senses to make sense of this. This phenomenon seems to go beyond what our five senses are able to detect. And that's frustrating because we can only gather the data while they fall within the boundaries of what we can experience. People want to see something because then it'll validate something for them. Say, I'll jump in the pool once I have something that clicks and I say, yeah, that's real. The fake aliens in Mexico, I knew they were fake a while ago because I spoke with Steve Mira, who had investigated, and he was like, yeah, those things are fake. And but it shows you the vindication, or not vindication, the commitment that somebody's willing to stake their career to a case. And it's happened time and time and again with different ufologists that somehow they fell for a con artist, or somehow the case turned out to be false, and they promoted it for so long as being real. And that's part of the disinformation. Those were maybe purposefully done to humiliate the researcher and to, discontinue interest in whatever it is that they're saying. But we're past that point now. We're done with people being mocked and ridiculed about it. It's time that people speak up. It's more than time that we speak up because it's not going to stop. And we can hide our heads in the sand and say, well, I know I could hide from reality by doing this and just being on my phone. What's going to make it worse is once we go into AI and the digital realm, like Meta and stuff like that, people will escape to that. It's easier to deal with this escapism than to deal with reality. But this has part to do with our reality. Technology can and will affect us, maybe not for the better. And maybe that's the warning that they're trying to tell us, is that if you don't take time to spiritually grow with your technology outgrows your spiritualism or the center of your civilization. It's going to be a runaway train that you're not going to be able to control. And it's going to do more damage to your species than good. And that makes sense. Like, if you realize that we have no control over technology, we put out all this AI, and who's monitoring it? Who's making sure that it's not going to start thinking for itself? Like, oh, there's no evidence that it's going to be safe in the long run, but we're doing it anyways. Every day, people are making decisions on behalf of 8 billion people, right? And this includes in the UFO world or the UAP world. People in these programs make decisions for all of us. Oh, we'll activate this. We don't know what it does. It could possibly set the entire planet's atmosphere on fire. Go ahead, push the button. Let's see what happens.
Why not?
No, yeah, exactly. Let's play God. Let's find out what happens. Even if there was mention of CERN when they were going to activate the ring, they didn't know what it was going to do. Was it going to create a black hole? Right. Screw it. Hit the power button. Let's see what happens. This happens every day. People make decisions on our behalf, not for the better. Obviously, there's wars in the world, and you can see that some people's decisions are absolutely horrific. This is what I mean. This is the evolution, the consciousness, awareness that we keep hearing about from these abductees, is that level of thinking, that frequency of thinking is not okay. You need to be higher than that. You need to be better than that. You're at the point to be better than this. We don't need to be this brutal. We don't need to kill each other's children. We've gone beyond that point. But the mentality we had in the medieval ages is the exact same mentality we have today. We just got bigger, better weapons to cause more damage and to kill more people. But it's the same mentality. So that's the scary bit about technology in our hands. Like, think of the nuclear bombs. Like, there's 10,000 nukes in the world. How scary is that?
I think that's an underestimate.
Yeah, probably, right?
Yeah.
But it's crazy. Like, even if there was seven would be too much. Especially now, they call them planet killers. Like, they'll annihilate everything. So it's our thinking, our way of saying that, we can only resolve our problems, our differences, by butchering each other and killing each other's children. That's how we're going to push our agenda. And to me, it's just primitive. I think we're way beyond that. We all think, you guys think the same. We're all beyond this, right? We shouldn't be there. This should not still be happening in 2023. But that's where we're at.
You think that's why they're still testing the water, so to speak? Like, when they come and they're abducting, because they're like, nope, they're still the dumbasses that they were, 500 years ago.
Somebody mentioned, I think it was, I forgot, maybe my co-host, but said, when I said, we're like toddlers running around with scissors, he says, it's more like toddlers running around with a loaded shotgun with the safety off. And that's exactly true. That's exactly our species. We design something that's brutal, and everything we design is originally designed to kill somebody else. Like a gun doesn't have multiple purposes. It's not a paperweight. You can't use it to you could use it to get food, I guess, but it's designed to kill. It has one purpose, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Everybody has guns. They're all designed to kill each other. We're all prepared to kill somebody if they want to come and kill us. That's innate in our species. That's something that we need to start working on and saying, why is that built into us, right? It's not positive. I think there's negative consequences to who we are. And I don't think we could progress to where we need to progress with this mentality. Because if we're killing each other, and weapons in space, they're all pointed at us. They're not pointed out. They're pointed back at us, like loaded guns to our heads. Like, that's crazy. We're, if you're a species looking at us, you're like, these guys are morons, right? They're self-destructive. But whatever reason they're here because of us. Not because of the atmosphere, not because of the animals, us. The ships are designed with medical rooms fit for a human body, with the tools and everything that they need to do their work on human bodies. Sometimes there's multiple medical bays in these ships. So the ships are designed for this purpose. That's a long game, vehicle. That's like you're invested if you're doing that at that point. So again, we have to look at that. Like, if they're going out of their way to do this, or to give messages to everybody globally, whether it's a janitor in Zimbabwe or everybody gets a message somehow, we have to look at that as evidence. Like, what are they saying? We need to collect that, the same as we collect UFO sightings. And then, get AI to help us out and say, hey, can you figure out the commonalities in all these stories? Can you give us bullet points of things we should focus on? It's got to be amazing. But, that we got amazing people every day coming forward and contributing in a special field or a speciality. And that's brilliant. That's what we need.
So it sounds like the primary concern of these species is husbandry of some kind, human husbandry. They're using us to breed, to propagate in some way. If they're here for us, they're not here for other minerals or other resources. We are the resources. So they're basically Facebook. That's what you tell me. They're Facebook.
Yeah. We're like Instagram to them. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we update our posts regularly. But their interest is in us. And, when I hear the threat narrative, if they've been here this long and we're finding crafts that are from archaeological digs, for crying out loud, that proves they've been here a long time. And if they meant us any harm, it would have been done by now. When we send out jets to intercept, they always outrun the jets, or they play with them, or they stop the jets from being able to fire anything at them. That shows maturity compared to us. We're willing to fire on them, and they're like, no, right? And they make us feel stupid. Like, you send the F-18 Hornet, which was like the fastest jet they had at the time, and this thing's dancing circles around them, making them feel stupid, right? And you could see it in their faces when they talk about it. They felt stupid. Like, there's nothing they could do on an object like that. There's not. If it wanted to annihilate you, it would, and it didn't. It just shows compassion and just maturity compared to us by far. And that's the point we need to take. Instead of saying, oh, there's a threat. Maybe there's an underlying message, though, we need to start looking at. Like, what are they saying? There's a lot of accounts, as traumatic as these experiences can be, of compassion, that these entities are compassionate or show in their own way that they care. Even I was talking to Terry Lovelace, which had a amazing UFO abduction with his friend. He was mentioning, he was screaming. He was like in this sort of like amphitheater of grays that were all looking at him. And there was the main, almost doctor-like figure that people mention all the time, working over him. And he was screaming and screaming. And this entity just looked at him upside down, much like my figure there, and just telepathically said, oh, be quiet. We always put you back. That's the closest thing to a joke I've ever heard a gray say, or I've ever heard anybody recount. That's amazing. It's like, wow, that's humbling. Yeah. Oh, be quiet. We always put you back. Like, that's awesome. Still terrifying. Don't get me wrong.
At least they have a sense of humor.
Well, yeah. Or there's the practical joker aspect to the phenomenon. Like, sometimes, people recount different things. There's a gentleman that he lived in a mobile home, and he had a narrow hallway, but he would be taken often, like once a month, every month. And he got fed up, and he set up a tripwire system in his hallway. And one night he senses they're there. He could hear them in the kitchen, and they're approaching down the hallway. And then he hears one of them actually fell over the tripwire. And when he got outside to look, they were all curious and looking at what had tripped them. And I'm like, that's amazing. I've never heard of anybody tricking a gray. So there are occurrences, that very interesting stories that give you more perspective that these things are physical. Like, they're not spiritual. Otherwise they wouldn't trip over something. But at the same time, they come through a wall, put you through a wall, a door. It doesn't matter. Or they just appear out of nowhere. It looks magical to us, but that's just technology so far advanced that to us, it's the same as magic, or the same as a god. Like, to us, there's no differentiating the two. If you're that elevated and that much more advanced than us, you're literally a god to us. And that's a cool aspect of the phenomenon, but scary at the same time.
It's interesting that you bring up the idea that they're not here to harm because they don't feel threatened by us. And I recall the experience of Travis Walton from Fire in the Sky. He's an Arizona native. My sister she used to live in the town he was from, Heber, Arizona. Oh, wow. And he was recently on Joe Rogan, and he said over the course of his life, he's reinterpreted his experience, where in the moment he felt very much threatened, very scared, and he was trying to defend himself physically. And over the course of his life, he now realizes that they weren't trying to hurt him at all. They were trying to calm him down and keep him safe.
It was a rescue mission.
Yeah.
Right. His buddies left the moment he got struck, and they didn't mean to strike him. They meant to get the hell out of there when they realized that there was witnesses. But he got a shock out of it. Was a reaction of the craft. He was too close to it. When they saw the light down, I think it was just for whatever reason them checking him out, because he just appeared there. It's maybe a reaction of the craft itself. Maybe it's not even the entities. We have to think of that. People mention that the craft seems to be intelligent or like a consciousness to it of some sort. But when he got zapped, he flew back and into some brush. And of course, his friends were scared. They thought he had just been killed by a flying saucer. And think about how shocking that is to your reality. So, of course, I don't blame him for leaving. But they left. So the entities had to decide, like, do we just leave this guy here to die, or do we save him? And it was a rescue mission, because he said his chest hurt. They were working on his chest. That's where he got struck. His reaction when the Greys were trying to calm him down, he started swatting at them with a tool he just found to his side. And they were like, nope. And he just walked out and left him alone in a room until he started walking out into the ship. Like, how cool of an experience is that? But terrifying. You were just in the bush working, not even 20 minutes ago. And now you're inside an alien craft. Like, I could only imagine what that does to your psyche. It's crazy.
I wouldn't leave you, Sam.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Kyle. Kyle's got my back.
He earned it. I told him not to get out of the car. Yeah. Well, even then, like, you have stories of, the Berkshire incident, where the little girl, her dad decided to chase the UFO. She's with her family. They had just gone out for ice cream, and he decides to chase the UFO. They arrive at the lake, and then the UFO takes her out of the back of the car. Not the dad, not the mom, not the other siblings, just her. And she had a feeling the whole time it was going to be her, that something was going to happen. And I found that story funny because she says she got returned in the middle of the night, maybe 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, at the exact same spot where they had taken her out of the car at the lake, and her family was gone. They were home sleeping. They didn't care. Like, the daughter's missing after chasing a UFO, and you don't care. Like, as a dad, I'd be there the whole night searching for her.
Yeah.
Right? The psychological effects that these sightings or these events, like, even if you weren't the one taken, those buggers did something to you for you to go, oh, let's just go home and go to bed and not care about your daughter. That is not a normal human reaction. So the fact that that happens to people, that they just sort of become apathetic about it, that's a scary bit, because then it goes to show how much control over your own mind and memory control do you really have. It gives, does it give credibility to, your self-control? And in this case, it doesn't appear to be so. Like, whatever it is that they do affects you, not only physically, but spiritually. And like, it's a deep connection that is unexplainable. It's alien to us in all the terms that alien can mean, right?
Oh, fascinating. Well, as we're drawing in to a close, I wanted to throw up the podcast, talk about your podcast, the UAP Studies Podcast. Where can we find your podcast?
So basically, it's available everywhere. Currently, it's not on Apple, but we just relaunched a new channel on YouTube. And we're still on Spotify and, Listen Notes everywhere, pretty much. We're working on a website as well, which is going to help the algorithm and tie everything nicely together with all the web links and everything. But yeah, wherever you get your podcast, UAP Studies is available there. We got a new co-host, Dr. Michael Glosson, of course, which is joining us. That's not our YouTube. That's the previous YouTube channel. Unfortunately, no longer under my control.
What's yours?
Well, it's still UAP Studies Podcast, but for some reason, it's not generating underneath the search. So to get the link, go to Twitter, and I got to post it and pinned right up there until it picks up in the algorithm, of course, right? But yeah, that's our old program, old logo. But yeah, no, the podcast is doing really good. We're hoping to have some really breakaway conversations with some really important people here coming forward. And it's about the study of the phenomenon, not only from scientists, but whistleblowers, experiencers. Our listeners are people in the Defense Department of the United States, which is cool because I'm a Vancouver boy. But knowing that is awesome. 55% of our listener base is American. We got people in NASA, Defense Department listening in, military. It's cool because we're getting their support as well, which is nice as well. You know what? I need to update that too. You're finding all the old stuff. That's awesome. So please send me those links. I need to know where you're getting this. I started this one, couldn't log back into it, but it's awesome. I'll send you all the links to the proper stuff so you have it for later. But it's awesome. You're finding all the stuff I'm not able to find. Yeah. But it's cool. I mean, started having 3 listeners a month, you know what I mean, on Spotify. Right. 2 of them were probably me guys re-listening to myself. And then, you get to the point, like, going almost 4 years next March, you got 150,000 listeners a month. And you're just like, that's amazing. Like, I never thought that the podcast would grow this fast. But it's the idea of the podcast. It's the concept of the podcast. And I have no ego when it comes down to studying this. If I'm at fault or I don't know something, I admit it. I'm like, dude, I don't know anything about the case. Can you educate me? And we need to be like that. And there's nobody that knows it all. It's impossible. So that just comes across as arrogance in the UFO world. And we need to be a lot more humble and be human and say, look, I don't know about this. Can you educate me? And people on Twitter are like, you're an idiot. You don't know about it. Like, okay, so you're not contributing. Fine.
Right.
Yeah. They're just, why am I arguing with you? It's fun to argue with them though sometimes, right? Or if you could come up with something that just make them feel stupid, it's a good feeling. But I try not to argue with idiots. I do the Mark Twain thing because Mark Twain had written, never argue with an idiot because they'll bring you down to their level and then beat you with years of experience. It is so true. It is so true.
Fantastic. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We really appreciate the time. Appreciate your experience as well as your insight into this topic. We have been looking for some insight about UFOs, especially with all of the recent revelations or testimony and of course the hoaxes that are out there as well, trying to be perpetrated on the public. And so it is great to have some of your experience and understanding with us today.
Hey, my pleasure.
Make sure for our listeners that you are checking out UAP Studies Podcast for more information on
the right one. Not the
right one. Yeah. I'll give you guys the links. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll find it.
That's just hilarious. That's hilarious. That was a funny. Yeah, that's good stuff.
And make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. We also appreciate Mojo Quid and Derek Galloway for your super live chats. You guys kept things very active. We appreciate our live viewers always. So until next time, keep on exploring the edges of the unknown.